Hey everyone, today we're looking at the selective power reading test number 5. Let's get into it. So, text 1 is an extract from Martin Luther King's very famous speech called I Have a Dream, or the I Have a Dream speech. Okay, now this is just a few lines from the speech. This is not the entire thing, but this is all we'll be reading. So this is the entire text for text 1. Now I encourage you guys to pause the video here, read the text, and then unpause the video when you are finished so that we can go on the questions. Now, question 1 is asking, Martin Luther King was the leader of the American Civil Rights Movement. Primarily, this movement fought against poverty, discrimination, pollution, or prohibition. Now, I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs in this speech just so we get a general idea of what this is about, and then we can have a look at the highlighted parts of the speech, which are where we actually find the answer for question 1. So, he says, I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So we see that this is a big point of his speech, that he wishes, this is part of his dream, that all men are created equal and that they uphold this value that all men are created equal. And then if you skip a little bit forward, we see that this is a second part, or a second key part of his dream, Martin Luther King's, that his 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Okay, so instead of someone being black or white or wherever they come from, they're not judged on their background or how they look, but based on their character or their personality or what they believe. Okay, so now that we know that that's what he was fighting for, that all men should be treated equally, that no one should be treated unfairly for how they look, the best answer for this would be discrimination. Okay, discrimination is the unfair treatment towards a group of people or a person based on how they look or what they believe or things like that. So it could be based on your race or your gender or things like that. Okay, so that's exactly what he's talking about here. So he's fighting against the unfair treatment of people of color or people that look different. Okay. Now, poverty is related to your economic status or your income, which means how much money you have. So that's not exactly what he was fighting against. Pollution, we should know what it is. Refers to, polluting the environment and mistreating the environment. And prohibition refers to alcohol usage, so not related to what he's talking about. Discrimination would be your answer for question 1. Now, question 2. Which of these proverbs relates to the line, they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character? So a proverb is like just a saying that people say that means something. Okay, so which of these proverbs relates the most to the line that he says in the final few lines of his speech? A friend in need is a friend indeed. Fortune favors the brave. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Or you can't judge a book by its cover. Now, if we have a look at this, they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character. What he's saying is that you shouldn't judge someone based on how they look, but on what's inside. Okay, not what's on the outside, but what's on inside. So the best proverb that relates to that is D. You can't judge a book by its cover. Okay, that's exactly what it means. You can't judge the outside unless you know what the inside is. Okay, so 2, your answer is D. Now, question 3. Which event in 2009 has further helped the realization of Martin Luther King's dream? Now, realization in this case means which event in 2009 has further helped his dream. So what has propelled his dream forward? What has helped his dream? What has made it go forward? Okay, so option A is the inauguration of President Barack Obama. Inauguration means the choosing of this person for president. Okay, B, the miraculous crash landing of USA Airways Flight 1549. C, the Philadelphia Phillies win the Baseball World Series. Or D, none of these. So, what I've highlighted in the text here is that his dream is that all men are created equal. And he wants people of color and, white people and black people to be treated the same. That's really what he wants, right? So A would be your best option here, the inauguration of President Barack Obama, because Barack Obama was the first black president in the United States. Okay, so 3A would be your best answer, because having that milestone, having the first black president in the United States, is something that is showing that his dream is coming true and that his dream is moving forward and we're making progress. Okay, so 3, your answer would be A. Now, we're done with that first text, so we're moving on to the closed passage. And we've had a few closed passage questions now, so you should know how to do these. This one is called Hang Loose, Youth Keep Options Open. Okay, now we have 4 blank spaces in this closed passage, 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the next slide, we will have 5 options to choose from, so 1 will be extra. Now, this text is kind of talking about the different beliefs and the different values in the youth of this generation versus maybe your parents or your grandparents, and how these different generations have different values and different beliefs. Okay, so again, I encourage you to read this text by pausing the video first. Just skip over the blank spaces, read the whole thing, and then you can unpause and continue. Now, these are your options that you're looking at. And now we're moving on to the question. Question 4 is the first one. So this is the first half of the text. Now, with these closed passage questions, you want to read everything around the blank space and then slot in each answer. So let's read around this. Australians born since the mid-70s don't share their parents' and grandparents' anxiety about the rapid rate of change and its destabilizing effect on our society. For them, constant change is the air they breathe, the water they swim in. It is simply the way the world is. So far what we're saying is that today's generation is more open to change, really. And that the parents and grandparents of today's generation were more resistant to change. If something was changing, like more technology or something was changing in the beliefs or the government, they were more against it. But today's generation is more open to it. So now let's see what works the best after that. Now, what we see after this blank space is a big bracket, and who are infuriated by older people. Continuing, let's go to the next sentence. They know that more than 50% of university students are women, that 45% of the workforce are female. Okay, so now this whole paragraph so far is talking about different beliefs that are changing, and more specifically, it's talking about women in the workforce and women in society and how they're treated. Okay, so now that we know that that's kind of the topic of this paragraph, let's see what options we have. Now, from the options, there's only 2 of these options that are related to women in society, which are A and D. So this one is talking about mothers having work, and this one is talking about the women's movement being an established historical fact, and that this youth generation now is the generation who take equality between the sexes for granted. Okay, so these 2 are the most related to this paragraph right now. This one is talking about stable housing and financial stability, which is unrelated right now. And this one is also, well, it's talking about your income. Okay, so this one is also quite unrelated. So between A and D, your best answer would be D, because we're talking about women in the workforce, which is part of the women's movement. Okay, having more women in the workforce and them having more rights and being able to do more things. So D would be your best answer here. Okay, we're not exactly talking about mothers specifically in this, in this blank space for question 4 right now. So 4, your answer would be D. Now on to question 5. We have the options A, B, C, and D. Okay, so again, it's the same paragraph, so a similar topic, that 45% and rising of the workforce are female, and that girls can do anything they choose. Something, something. They don't expect mom to be there making peanut butter sandwiches when they get home from school, and they vaguely wonder why she even bothers mentioning the fact that that's what her mother used to do. So knowing that this paragraph is about, the movement of women, we've already used option D, so we can cross this out completely. And the only other option that was related was option A. So that would be your answer for question 5. And it's also related because it's talking about how nowadays people don't expect their mothers to be in the kitchen all the time because they're more in the workforce, just like it says here. They know that most mothers have paid work outside the home because that's how it is for their own mothers. Okay, so again, B and C are talking about different topics than the topic in this paragraph, so those would not be your answers. So your answer for question 5 is A. Now, question 6, we've already used A and D for previous questions, so we have C and E to choose from. Now, let's look at this paragraph and see what the topic is generally once you have a read through it a little bit. So, first sentence is gone. Let's continue from there. Even if their parents have work, at least 30% of young Australians are facing the bleak prospect of a labour market that doesn't want them. At least not yet. So then in these brackets we have, if you have applied unsuccessfully for 200 jobs as a respondent in one of my recent research projects had, what would you do next? So this paragraph is kind of talking about employment, right? 30% of young Australians are not wanted in the market, in the work market, or they're not wanted in the workforce. Okay, so this is kind of the topic that we're talking about here. Now, best answer, because of that, would be C, because this is talking about the reality of unemployment. Okay, so C is your answer for question 6. On the other hand, roughly 750,000 members of this generation live in a household where no one is currently earning any wages, so the reality of unemployment is pretty stark. Okay, so 6, your answer would be C. Now, question 7, the final one for this closed passage. We've already used C and D, so it's between B and E now. Again, let's use that same technique where we have a read through the paragraph, get an idea of what the topic is, because every paragraph is going to have a new topic or a new subject. So again, the first line is gone. Having grown up in the thick of the information revolution, they know today's technology is already obsolete by the time they get their hands on it, and that smarter things are constantly coming over the horizon. They know there's an accessible drug culture in every town and suburb, and that street kids are part of the scene. Okay, so far we're talking about technological developments, like the information revolution, which means we're getting more information. And they know technology is already obsolete by the time they get their hands on it, which means technology, as soon as you get new technology, it's already old because new technology is coming, and then new technology is coming, and then new technology is coming. So it's like almost every month or every year, it feels like last year's technology is already old. That's how quick technology is moving. So that's what that's what this paragraph is talking about, is the progression of technology and how the generation relates differently to the progression of technology. So between B and E, your best answer would be E. To the intense irritation of their parents, the members of this generation are able to program the VCR without even reading the manual. Okay, so the VCR is an example of technology. It might be a little bit of an old one, so you might not recognize it, but it is an example of technology. And being able to use it without reading the manual is an example of technological development and how people are getting better at using technology. So it relates to this paragraph well. B, again, is talking about housing, which does not relate to this one at all. So for question 7, your answer would be E. Now, some key points to take away from this test as we're finished with those 2 texts that we had to read. 1 is the technique for closed passage questions. Again, these 3 steps will be here. Read the text in its entirety, read all the answers, and then go back and slot in each answer from the top. Okay. Now, that second text was quite difficult. A lot of the words were very advanced. Now, that does not mean that you have to know every word in a text, but you should be able to kind of guess what the word means based on the words around it. Okay? And another thing that helps if you don't know the word's meaning is this point over here. Paragraphs are there to separate big chunks of information, so try and identify what each paragraph is about to help you answer questions. So that's what I kind of did with those paragraphs, is that you separate them into different topics. So the first paragraph in that second closed passage question was about women in society and how they're treated in society. The second paragraph was about employment, and the third paragraph was about technology. Okay, so if you kind of separate the paragraphs in that way, that can help with identifying which blank space or which option goes in the correct blank space, because it would go in its right subject area or in its right paragraph. Okay, and now we're finished with this test.